We are starting with our next session and discussion, powered by Ernst & Young, and I'm your host, Panu. The topic for this discussion is building profitable businesses at scale in clean energies. The discussion points would be customer segments and drivers for clean energy substitution, technology and supply chain innovation towards cost-competitive clean energy, regulatory enablers for clean energy adoption, and many more. And to take this session forward, I would like to call upon stage our moderator, Mr. Srivatsa Anchan, partner E&Y, Energy Transition and Decarbonization. May we have a huge round of applause for Mr. Srivatsa Anchan, please. To join Mr. Srivatsa, I would like to call our first panelist, Mr. Kushagra Nandan, MD and CEO, Sunsource Energy. The next panelist joining us on stage is Mr. Anshul Khandelwal, Strategy Lead, New Energy, Reliance. A huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. The next panelist joining us is Mr. Deepak Thakur, Managing Director and CEO, Mahindra Susten. The next panelist joining us is Mr. Raghavendra Madaiah, Head, Non-Utility Markets Renewables, Apraava Energy Private Limited. The next panelist is Mr. Sandesh Shetty, National Sales Head, Waaree Energy. Again, a huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. And last but not the least, our final panelist, Mr. Prakhar Jha, Lead Projects, WELSPUN New Energy. A generous round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for our moderator and the amazing panelists. And to take this session forward, I would request our moderator, Mr. Srivatsa Anchan, to take the stage. The stage is all yours, sir. Thank you.
A very good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for taking time to the distinguished panelists for participation here. With reference to this session, which is profitable businesses at scale in new energies, I think our focus was to have a discussion and sharing of perspectives around what are building blocks for this. I think Panu referred to 4 elements where we spoke about a focus on customers with reference to how they are embarking on their decarbonization agenda commitments to clean climate goals. The second being having understood the customer, looking at technology or innovation, because the country is focusing on building out capacity in manufacturing and generation of clean energy. So what are innovation elements for us to consider? Related to technology innovations, also supply configuration, because there are several options around the value chain that are available for such interventions. And lastly, when we look at the interconnect between customer insight and supply chain, there is regulatory enablement. So there are enablers that we could have with regards to the government of this. So if we can move to the next slide. Sorry, I think I've left the connector. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So we spoke about choices, right? So when we look at value pools in clean energies, there are several spaces that could be occupied, options for decarbonization in terms of both energy consumption as well as feedstock. But these would be with reference to end-use sectors, which could be in heavy manufacturing, in the process industries, leading up to sectors that have a significant export bias, right? For us, the lens that we will take, as I mentioned, was customer insight, technology innovation, supply configuration, and then the regulatory enablers. Uh, just a very quick snapshot in terms of when we look at customers, right? Those who sign up for clean climate goals are required to reduce emissions. Reduction in emission doesn't happen easy. There are a portfolio of initiatives that are required across scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 emissions. And this requires a clinical evaluation and an adoption of initiatives as far as energy substitution, feedstock substitution, logistics, decarbonization, etc. So there have been several stalls and concepts that have been launched today, which are very much focused around these themes. But it is about us as a community understanding what end-use customers in hard-to-abate segments will need to consider as far as their decarbonization is considered, right? So having spoken about the customer, then it's looking at the supply. And when we look at supply, our lens is to look at manufacturing for clean energies, moving forward into the aspects of generation of electricity from electricity energy storage, looking at bioenergies, and then taking it forward to application, both electricity and then further into secondary energy vectors such as hydrogen and this. So there are a multitude of choices. This is a slide that is typically very busy and can intimidate, but this just reflects the options that are available. And hopefully through the deliberation with our panelists today, we will obtain perspective in terms of how successful companies can start evaluating these choices and exercise and build clean energies businesses at scale in a profitable manner, right? So with that, I'll move to the panel discussion, probably seat myself, and then start the dialogue as far as our panel conversations. Thank you. So in terms of our discussion, I'd like to start with customer insight and maybe a question to you, Deepak, with reference to how we see end customers, right? And when we look at end customers, what are competitive strategies that developers could adopt in order to ensure that there is a competitive proposition that can be put together with regards to the adoption of clean energies in the end customer segments?
Thank you. Thank you, Shiva. Okay, so while I was reflecting on competitive space for renewables and a developer's perspective of creating competitive advantage, I think first of all, my belief is there are fundamentals that need to be put into play and focused on, whether it's a utility scale customer or a CNI customer, first of all. And based on the experience we have, and I personally have, I think I put down 10 points or 10 pillars, so to say. And yeah, Anshul, I required to remember that because I don't have a memory like you. I think first of all, I think it starts with application centricity and customer centricity. I think the reason I point this as the first and most important element is because understanding the ask and then building and proposing a solution which meets that ask rather than following a cookie cutter approach. I think that for me is the first fundamental that needs to be focused on. The next one I say is technological astuteness, and I think here I want to make a slight bifurcation because people talk about strength in solar or in wind or storage. I want to bring in another facet, which is optimal modeling for that particular application, building in an operating philosophy for the complex project that is being built, because today we are talking about RTC, we're not talking about intermittent power anymore. And that philosophy, that operating philosophy being optimized to make sure that it delivers not only economics, but efficient operations. The third thing which is important from a developer perspective, and I think this is when you take a more holistic view of the solution you're factoring in. So whether it is the design and engineering effort, whether it is the proposal engineering effort, or the BD effort, I think are these three elements speaking in cohesive voice, because sometimes it is found that it is not the case. And that's where I think the seeds of dissonance can get created from a customer's point of view. Then comes a very important element, and I think in the environment that we are operating as developers is a constantly changing state and central regulatory ecosystem. Being quite aware of the theory, but more importantly, having in play a plan to implement the actions that you have to take, keeping this in context. I think for me, this is the fourth pillar. Then comes a very essential element, which is land and connectivity. Now that GNA has come into play, we see already a lot of challenges which are coming in, right? In fact, as of yesterday, there's a stay order which got applied in AP, and I think we are seeing what's going to happen going forward. So connectivity is becoming gold or diamond. So having a clear understanding of a strong knowledge base on connectivity and land permitting approvals, but more importantly, a very strong team on the ground which actually can enable you to source land and connectivity for your projects. The sixth one, which I talked about, is an efficient build model. Because, and this is where I think the strength, and we speak from personal experience because Sustain has an in-house EPC entity, I think that becomes a huge differentiator. Because whether it's conceptualizing a project or delivering it, or even bringing it close to HOTO or operationalizing it, an in-house EPC can make a huge paradigm difference in terms of delivering value to a customer. If you don't have that advantage, how do you work with a strategic alignment with an EPC partner would be crucial for a developer. The next one, which is efficient project finance and re-engineering of your financial model across the 25 or 15-year tenure that you're going to run the project. How astutely are you doing that? I think for me, that's another element that needs to be looked at. Then comes an element, and I think this is very critical in today's domain. While we are talking about being competitive, I think we need to have an industry which is healthy. And the element that needs to be factored in very, very prudently by all of us is risk management. Now, risk management has different, I would say, points. It's whether you're investors, your own shareholders, whether it's from the external ecosystem, managing and balancing all these aspects so that you are able to create a clear list of risks and also a mitigation plan. The reason I'm stressing on this point is because when we are entering into a contract with a customer, it's a 15-year, it's a 10-year, and in case of utility projects, a 25-year contract. And if we have to be sustainable through that period, I think these elements should be not only planned at the outset, but also reviewed very periodically. And I want to stress this point, Srivatsa, because just I think a week or 10 days back, we had an announcement by CA which spoke about 96 gigawatts of renewable assets which are in quandary. We as an industry need to take ownership for that. And this is where I think we fail, is because people punt, and I think punts will result in 96 gigawatts being in quandary. So if you want to be really in the game and be competitive, I think we need to start doing this more prudently and more effectively. The second last thing I'll talk about is contract management. I think efficiency in contract management, whether it's your vendors, whether it's your off-takers, whether it is your internal service providers. And last but not the least is capability building. And this is where you're talking about upskilling, because the world is changing quite drastically on various things, tangible and intangible, resourcing adequately, digitalize an automation being built in, and also lastly, but working with external stakeholder partners to bridge the gaps that you perhaps don't have. So with this, I believe I want to leave a message which is saying that my vision is that let's decarbonize energy, let's digitalize, and let's democratize. And we as developers, we as an industry have the ownership of doing the fundamentals right. And that's been my response. Slightly long, but I thought it kind of sets the tone for the questions that you're going to pose further. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deepak. I think an excellent start to what we should have a very robust discussion. And I think it lays the tone for our conversation. I'd like to pose the next question to you, Kushagra. With reference to, let's say, the commercial and industrial segment, right? This is an emerging space, very exciting. There are reforms that have come through with regards to green open access. So how do you see developers capturing this opportunity with regards to customers who may be looking to source, procure renewable electricity and set that up?
Thank you, first of all. First of all, I think really appreciate, Deepak, what you mentioned, these 10 pillars, right? And very detailed, specifically land, connectivity, and project financing all through the spectrum. So I think from a developer perspective, I think it's not very far from what is already laid out. But I think it is very clear with green open access rules coming in, and that first fundamental is the cap has come down from 1 megawatt to 100 kilowatts, right? Which gives an opportunity as the states will start adopting green open access rules. Few states have already started doing it, and few, I think 4 have already adopted, and 5 are underway. And but its proof is in the pudding, and we all know adoption is one thing, but I see a lot of smiles how it actually will get into the implementation stage. But it actually gives us a lot of, if we think about from a perspective that if actually adoption and implementation also go hand in hand, it gives a tremendous opportunity for MSMEs also, because 100 kilowatt is the benchmark which has come in, and aggregation of the demand within that same state, right? So MSMEs, if they are looking at going solar, and if they don't have roof installations, or even, for example, even a data center, if they don't have, so although that loads will vary, but there are smaller data centers which are coming in, hospitals, right? It will open up a large spectrum of clients, number one, which would have not had opportunity to go renewables or solar, because either they didn't have enough rooftop space, and they did not fell into a category of up to a megawatt or megawatt plus interconnection, right? So this will open up a huge market for clients which the developers can serve for. The other opportunity which we see, which also is in addition to green open access perspective, is with this GST going through, right? Now a lot of data, right? A lot of MSMEs specifically, which could not get the benefit of financing, right? They are now getting into a zone where they can start getting the financing, because their cash flows can be seen through GST portal, right? And a lot of banks which we are seeing are ready to finance those type of projects. And there is an aggregation of demand, somebody setting a 1 megawatt, 2 megawatt smaller projects, so they can start basically getting benefited out of it. Fundamentally, we also see from a developer perspective, the larger the aggregation of the demand is happening. I think Deepak also pointed out with solar plus wind, for example, as we're moving towards higher CUF solutions, be it solar plus wind, be it solar plus storage, which will come down in another few years as the cost starts going in, or including, or even biofuels, right, coming in. So it will provide enough opportunity for end consumers to increase or optimize their CUF, or take more energy from renewables as compared to what they're already taking. So this in turn will also give a lot of opportunity as we see the greening of supply chain, right? A lot of export-oriented industries as they set up in India, or so they can actually part of their initiative to the world, which they can supply their material to the world, right? So they can already claim green initiatives are already taken, right? And solar or renewables become the lower spectrum. So their selling power increases, right? Because going renewables, first of all, increases their EBITDA, right? Because the commercial industrial segment, once you go solar, it reduces your energy tariffs by 40 to 50%, which has a direct impact on an EBITDA. And now you go and claim your green benefits in your marketing efforts, right? So it also increases the sellability of the product as well. But with specific to green open access, I think the initiative is right. But I think as an industry, we are waiting for eventually the new Electricity Act which comes in, right? This is more of a patchwork, but it's a good patchwork which we are moving towards. But we still see, for example, Haryana has already implemented, right? West Bengal has done the initiative. But the proof will be in the pudding, because we still see there is challenges coming in Haryana, challenges coming in other states as well. But at the same time, as adaptation come in, I think the next year is going to be very crucial. How we transition into the actual implementation, how the actual approvals will come through. Yeah, but I think overall it's a very positive step.
Thank you, Kushagra. Great perspective on C&I aggregation and leveraging open access to the same. I'll toggle to Raghavendra, and with reference to your interest in building out a C&I portfolio, and just building on Kushagra's commentary on green open access, targeting C&I clusters, etc. operationalizing the same, working back with the grid, and ensuring interconnect, right, with points of generation, points of consumption. What are some of the challenges that you see, and how do you see developers overcoming the same in an operational context?
Thank you, Srivatsa, and thank you, the panelists. It was really insightful, Mr. Deepak and Kushagra. See, some of the challenges, of course, which all the developers are facing and which are common for all renewable energy projects, including the CNI projects, are one is land. I mean, there is delay in land acquisition. Then we have ROW issues. Again, there are delays in ROW issues. And we have availability of substation for evacuation. Yeah, so we know in some of the states, there have been resource-rich locations where, I mean, most of the substations are full. I mean, infrastructure availability is a concern. So availability of substation itself is something which is very crucial. There have been some instances where you get approval, but then when you submit the application, you get to know that the infrastructure is still not ready. And these are some of the general challenges, which is for all the renewable energy projects. But then coming to CNI projects, here, I mean, before highlighting any challenges in CNI segment, I would like to mention that the most popular model in CNI segment or CNI projects would be captive or group captive model. So why is this model so popular? Because I mean, this is the most viable option for any CNI customer, because they are saving the cross-subsidy surcharge and the additional surcharge. With this, they are making good savings. But of course, DISCOMs, I mean, we see there are resistances from DISCOMs in different states because they are losing their customers. Yeah, of course. Here we face a lot of challenges, like there are delays in getting the open access permissions from the DISCOM. Yeah, not just open access permissions. Again, some states do not even allow captive or group captive projects, wherein you don't the customers do not invest 100%. So wherein developers don't have a role there. Yeah, but having said that, when these challenges are there, there have been some positive developments. Positive developments like, for example, Telangana. It has been like the last project, CNI project, which was done in Telangana is way back in 2016 or 17. After that, no CNI projects or open access projects were getting approval. So there, now Telangana has come out with open access regulations. Policy is out now. So there is a positive sign in Telangana. At the same time, Gujarat, there was no provision for ISTS open access projects in Gujarat. Now there is a provision for ISTS project in Gujarat. So that is also a positive sign. And with which we have already mentioned about green energy open access rules. So once implemented, I think there will be uniformity in OA regulations across the country. So there is lack of uniformity. For example, there are some states where multiple consumers are not allowed in single SPV. So you won't get approval for such projects where you have single SPV but multiple consumers at the same. So where you need to create a dedicated SPV for each consumer. Yeah, again, it adds up to operational costs, and the maintenance of that SPV for any developer. So say we have 50 customers, we need to have 50 SPVs in such states. So that's a challenge. So uniformity of regulations, which green energy open access brings, it is crucial, and it will also help in uniforming the banking provisions and banking regulations across. This will really help the developers. And there are some other regulations, like some states you cannot your capacity or sizing of the project is limited to the contract demand. So this is one of the some of the challenges which we face. So But then, yes, there are positives. We are waiting for the green energy open access rules. Once implemented, these problems or challenges, something which will overcome.
Thanks, Raghavendra. Great insight as far as operationalizing open access. I'll toggle from electricity. I think we've spoken about the electricity ecosystem and how that can be taken up to scale. But Prakar, maybe talking about the interest in green hydrogen, right, as a secondary energy vector and investments thereof, right? So how do you see plays emerging where, developers could explore hydrogen and its derivatives, but also build a supply ecosystem that is, focused on competitiveness, but meeting customer requirements as they emerge, right? So,
yeah, thanks. Yeah, so a lot of insight from all of the co-panelists regarding C&I segment. Regarding hydrogen also, I think the C&I segment will play a demand driver. At the same time, developers will be focusing again, as they are right now on C&I segment. A lot of utility players also now moving to focus on C&I segment. But the challenges, if we talk about, as far as the investment in hydrogen is, I mean, of course, everybody knows that right now the economies of scale is a challenge where, you want to drive down the cost from, let's say, existing on paper from $5 to, let's say, $2 or $3 or $1 per se. That has to be done early also because of the national targets, and also, even C&I segments have, stricter ESG mandates to go net zero, let's say by 2030 instead of 2070 of our nation. So, yeah, so economies of scale is a big challenge where I think some innovative approach is required. If we go, let's say, 4 to 5 years ago, I first time heard about the gigafactories concept, where, batteries for the mobility, Tesla setting up a gigafactory and, having a lot of roadblocks which were all across all the news articles. So similar kind of scale would be required. May not be one factory, maybe 4 to 10, maybe 4 or 5 gigafactories in parallel would be required to, reach that scale where, the $1 or $2 boundaries or limits can be reached. Apart from the economies of scale, I think the C&I segment also, it's a big segment where we need to look at, within that segment also there are a lot of sub-segments which has their own tailored solution which is required. For instance, basic metal mining industry, they are already using hydrogen in some or the other ways. How to convert that brown hydrogen to, let's say, green hydrogen with a least resistance path, develop a business case, and try to do those baby steps in each segment. I gave example of, let's say, steel industry or metal mining industry. There are examples in petrochemical refining industries, agriculture industry, fertilizers. So those processes have to, reinvent, re-engineer their thing where, you can use hydrogen, green hydrogen as a substitute. And those will actually increase or fasten the learning curve for them so that they can build up a confidence and see through how they can scale up on the, those gigafactory concepts, which is at a macro level. So I think, yeah, these are the challenges where, I think C&I will play a very crucial role as a demand driver. At the same time, a lot of things needs to be done in order to, substitute in the energy sources by green hydrogen. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Prakar. I'll toggle from customer insight and choices that are available to technology innovation and supply side configuration, right? And maybe Anshul, perspective from your side on choices that are available on vis-a-vis technology across the new energies value pools, and what could developers evaluate, how they should evaluate these choices, and what perspectives on indigenization do you see with reference to technology innovation?
Yeah, thanks, Srinivas. I think if we have to answer how technology choices will be available and how developers should pick them up, we need to segregate the choices in three parts. One is the equipment side choices, second is the development choices, and third is then maybe delivery choices. So equipment choices, I mean, all the technology. So we know solar, today we are talking about perovskites coming in, especially for CNI segment, high efficiency module or high efficiency solar panels generating in a small area is a big news, given that now we are going as a country from, open access, which was 1 megawatt plus, to let's say a couple of hundreds of kilowatts. So, it is going to be more decentralized, as Deepak was mentioning. So if it is going to be more decentralized, it's going to be more within the city limits or more near to the customer, more in the industrial areas. Hence, efficiency of module will start playing big role, and there are leaps in the technology which are coming forward. So I think those are the choices which will come. Even today, there are advanced technologies. So we have invested, for example, in HJT technology. Similarly, in future, there are going to be more advancements in technology, and developers will have to pick up leading edge technologies in CNI is one implication. On wind, if we go, and we are seeing a lot of CNI buzz around with hybrid, and hybrid not only with solar wind hybrid, even batteries. So when we come to wind, larger size of wind turbines, especially in the states which are coastal and in good wind zones, start making sense now, and they bring two advantages. One is obviously scale leads to lesser cost. Second advantage they bring is the generation advantage. So they can do better CUFs. So those are the choices which wind brings. Also hybridization choices there. So which is on the development philosophy side. That whether you can do co-located options there or not, and if you're doing co-located options, how do you do transmission or distribution of it? So that becomes a choice. Lastly is the battery integration, which is a situation today. So I see very less adaptation of battery integration, but I think there is a learning from the West that we are almost at the cusp of battery adoption and doing more hybridization or giving RTC power. I think what Deepak was mentioning is this is one of the most important customer lever that, round the clock power is required. And this is a choice which now if developers take to the customer, I find a lot of customers ready to take it. Because a lot of customers are not only asking green RTC power, a good set of customers like data centers are asking for green electron also getting delivered to them. So how do you use battery? Where do you use battery is important. And then after the development philosophy, we go to the last part, which is delivery. So digitization, virtual power plant are two important things. I think hydrogen getting integrated with electron in the form of the offering and offering energy as a service is the next choice which, people should start making. And if you look at West, it is not about large corporates only. West has created many examples where smaller companies, focused companies on a certain area have been able to present sustainable business models in these areas. So I think those are the choices for developers.
Thanks, Anshul. Great perspective in terms of choices across three dimensions. Sandesh, thank you for your patience, right? And wanted to get your perspective on vertical integration, right? So if we look at investment in manufacturing along the technology domains, right? If we were just to look at the equipment cluster, there are choices available supported by production-linked incentives where I think there is an emphasis on indigenization. There is also a emphasis on local manufacturing. So wanted to get your perspective in terms of how could that be a contributor to innovation in the supply side and also cost competitiveness.
Hello. Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for taking out your time to hear us out. I'll be talking about solar over here, the supply chain. If you know, like we start from polysilicon, ingot, wafer, cells and modules. The monopolization of the products reduces once it comes down. That is at the module, at the, polysilicon level, you have a couple of guys, but if you come to the module, there are a lot of people are there. So what I have seen over a period of time that the developers who are coming into the model, or what do you say, to increase the profitability, they want to come into, get into the supply chain of the modules as coming up. I feel that there is no much gap between the, what do you say, the supply and the demand. Because if you look at, let us talk about coming from a module background, I would like to make a simple study on the module, this thing. India is about a 20 gigawatt country, maximum. I don't think so. Last couple of years, maximum we reached a 16. But we are more at absolute at this point of time. We are about ALM approved is 24, so it's fine. So you do not need that. Now, if you want to make profits, I would say more profits for the developers, they have to get into, I would say, in the above value chain, where they can be a partner also to the manufacturer, and they can make better profits. Or the other way, I would say, because I was looking at the consumption of the electricity, we are far, far, far behind. I would say we are far behind. We are looking at the US market also. So here, you have to increase the LCOE, or you have to increase the, consumption of renewables, and that can give you a better profitability. If you look at the product in solar, it's simple. Coming again to the model, there are only two ways to get a better pricing. One is a disruptive technology, which people are working on to it. Some days back, I was seeing in the YouTube where a glass substrate is painted by methane and one more gas for a better efficiency. And the second one is what I would say, it's an operation cost. You reduce the operation cost and get a better BOS or a better CTM, the cell to module losses, and you get a better prices. These are the only two things. And I feel it has to be left to the manufacturers. They can do a better job over there. And the developers that completely focus on spreading renewables power energy. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandesh. So I think we've covered the customer perspective. We've looked at technology and supply side configuration. I'd want to move to enablers now. And when we speak of enablers, these are initiatives or programs that help mitigate risks but also capture opportunity. So Kushagra, maybe quick question for you with reference to the build out of electricity segments, right? And when we look at utility scale, but more specifically C&I, it's dynamic. There are customers of various profiles, load profiles, quantum, etc. So when a developer evaluates risks, what should he or she be cognizant of, and what are typical mitigation mechanisms that you would want to see in place?
I think it's from a developer perspective. I think I can fill the entire wall. I think the risk will continue, especially in this industry. But I think if you look at, it's classified into commercial risk, regulatory risk, and technology risk. I think these are the major categories or buckets I would rather put it in. From a commercial risk perspective, one major risk what we run is majority of our buying, if you look at from a EPC perspective or project perspective, 50% of the cost is in solar panels. Then maybe 7-8% is in inverters, right? So we are buying almost, we're signing a deal today, we're buying almost 50% of a component from China or overseas, right? Even though the panels, even though we are buying from India, of that almost 50% cost is in cells, which is also coming from China. So that hedging between INR and when do you do it, right? When do you buy, right? Those decisions are a major issue. Second part to that is the eventually, if you look at the value chain, polysilicon companies control the entire value chain, and there are only few of them. And you sign a deal now, it can go either ways. The cell price can go in a different direction, or the module prices similarly follow up. Current scenario is very different. Historically, it has never happened. The cell prices are going up, but the module prices are going down. But generally, historically, it's a very big risk. So one is that aspect from a developer perspective. The other aspect from a commercial perspective is if you have land or interconnect. As a strategy, as a company, what we have done is we tell our business development team, we do not go out and sit down with our end client till the time we have land, we have boundaries secured, because boundary is a major challenge. We have interconnection secured, we have transmission line, we have our grid site substation already done. So when we sit down in front of a client, we have majority of the issues related to land, transmission line, grid side substation interconnection are already sorted out. And it's only the within the boundary, within the fence is, and we can, when we're sitting down, we can tell them, okay, by this 6 or 9 months, we can deliver you the power, which I see few companies are doing it and they're starting to adopt to it. So that's other risk which we're trying to hedge out. And then there is always from a perspective from a commercial perspective, when you're going out, what is the project financing, right? What tenor you are doing it, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, right? 25 years of the PP, and then the project financing reflects to it. The other challenge is, how do you validate the credit risk of a client? The client can be good now. You focus on a AAA, AA, or BBB plus, right? But what happens to the rating if 3 years down the line something happens? Then how do you basically move around, and your lender risk, basically, I think lender increases your interest rate, then it basically your IRRs goes for a toss. Moving, so there are few of them as well on the commercial side. Regulatory is another bigger challenge in a country, right? We have to grandfather the regime which we are entering the contracts in. There have been multiple instances where we sign a contract now, and then there is somebody comes in, right, and then they, in the regulatory body, then they, or somewhere in the institutions, that the law is changed, right? But the change in law, I think that the central government has made a lot of initiatives now. The grandfathering of the time when you signed a contract has to prevail through the tenor of the contract. But still, I think we have to push very hard. We had also at one instance, we had to actually, in fact, go up to the Prime Minister's level, and we have to bring it down at the PMO level, right? And then it eventually happened. But these are real issues. Then there are other challenges on the regulatory part of it. From a technology, is also our industry is rapidly changing, right? You sign a contract now, that what type of technology you're looking at, right? N-type, P-type, and then the other variations around it. Inverters also challenges, right? So you have to keep a very big list. You have to understand your risk very well, and then only you can basically bake in the pricing, right? And then you can offer it to the client. And I think the clients are also understanding how far the project has been baked, and then they're ready to sign up with you. Yeah.
Thanks, Kushagra. Very comprehensive with reference to coverage. I'll pick up the point on regulatory and link it back to your commentary on the development and the delivery, let's say, ecosystems for innovation. But from an enablement standpoint, if we were to look at the regulatory framework as it stands today, so Anshul, what could we do more? You know, one, as an industry, as a collective of development professionals, but also look to support from the government in terms of enablement, both at the central and the state level.
Yeah, so I think Kushagra made some very important points. If we look around in various countries which have had better adoption of renewables and clean energy technologies, we will come with certain enablers which the policies have created. So one is a demand enabler. So today the policy environment at some places may not be doing sufficient to create a demand certainty or a demand enabler. So for example, you know, we have green open access regulations, but uniform adoption of it, as a lot of you were saying. And then not just that, going to the root cause why states are not adapting it, and how we can create a certainty for at least, let's say, 5-7 years on things like banking, things like the kind of ASSCS we will levy. All those are required to create demand certainty. Second type of enabler is more of what we say is a policy which enables the delivery. So, for example, transmission corridor, as Kushagra was mentioning, we don't have any certainty on transmission corridor today, whether a CNI customer will get or not. Secondly, ancillary service regulations have to come. So these are important enablers I think we need. Last is a longevity kind of a thing in this sector. I think the core issue of this sector for last 20 years has been any kind of group captive has not taken up, and I'm right now only talking limited to electricity, is because DISCOMs are continuously saying that our paying customers are moving away. So unless we as country are not finding a solution there. So for example, China, when was adapting solar, came up with various subsidization policies which were directly attacking either the distribution efficiency or the higher cost of technology. We want to adapt more green, but we want to still continue with the old regulations. And the last one, I think I forgot in the demand enablers were the, why do we limit to electricity? Green hydrogen, I think green hydrogen is today where around 2008 where solar was. So I think we need strong demand enabler like green hydrogen obligations today in hydrogen so that we can create a scale in manufacturing and in delivery, and we are not dependent on West and China in that case.
Thanks, Anshul. Very structured perspective with reference to enablers. I think, Deepak, when you started your commentary, right, you had spoken about investment that is required, risks that need to be managed. But probably the closing question for the panel, and then I'll have a set of closing remarks. But at least the last question was investment trends. So what are investors looking for? And what structures could emerge in order to facilitate the investment or also jumpstart investment in this space?
Thanks, Srivastava. So I think some numbers which I wanted to rattle off. So clearly, I think if you look at the numbers stacking up, I think there's been an upward trajectory. If you look at it, I think roughly about $6.7 billion invested in about 49 greenfield projects in the last 3 years. If you just look at the investments in international greenfield investments, I think it's grown up from $1.2 billion in 2020 to 2.7 billion in 2021, and it's gone up to 2.8 in this. So there's a move towards investments being or India being seen as an attractive destination for investments. And I think the challenge is going to become bigger because if you look at the 50 gigawatt per year plan that MNRE has announced recently, and CNI business space, I think, is expected to grow 2x from 29 gigawatts to about 50 gigawatts. So clearly, I think what we've been seeing so far, I think there'll have to be a further upsurge in that. Okay. Now, one thing I want to bring into perspective is because while we talk about investments, we focus on greenfield projects, but I think there is investments also required for brownfield projects. And that's where I think we have a challenge because a recent survey done by a large investment banker actually found out that majority of all foreign investment which is coming in is for greenfield. Brownfield projects, there's less than 12.5% interest for people to even consider or evaluate. I think that's the balance that I think as an industry we'll have to kind of see how that gets established. I would say that we have about $2 billion of deals already signed in the CNI segment this year. Okay, and I think that augurs well because all the time utility was the one which was seeing a lot of traction. So clearly CNI is seeing a good jump. Now you're talking about investments. As we see it, equity investments, let's talk about equity investments. You have PE funds clearly in the game, have been in the game for a long time. You have pension funds which have been there but now upping the ante. You have conglomerates, international and Indian, which are now getting into the investment game in renewables. And then you have InvITs, something that has been proven in the transmission distribution space, in the real estate space, now kind of catching or being attracting, also being attracted in the renewable space as well. I guess the biggest challenge is going to be the debt raising. So equity is there. I think equity is really coming and it's going to be there. I think raising debt is proving to be a challenge. And that's where I would talk about a few things. And the debt also, if you look at it, I think more than 90-95% of debt in this country in renewables will be all domestic. There is very limited international debt which has come in. And I think we haven't even touched upon another space which is bonds. I think as an industry, I think bonds is something that we just speak about in panel discussions like this, but I don't think traction of that has happened on the ground, except for a few large conglomerates which have attempted it. But it's more of a blended kind of a concept that they apply there. So that I would say, and I would kind of reiterate what Kushagra said and what I think Anshul touched upon, is the fact that stability of policy. Clearly what we saw, while a lot of positives have happened from the government and the policymakers, what we saw on the group captive side 2 months back created a huge challenge for developers. I'm sure there was some wisdom behind it, but it took a lot of effort for people to go back and actually get the powers to be to change that. So clearly that is not something which augurs well for raising long-term capital by way of debt. So I think that the policy stability is going to be a very critical factor, and we will have to work in partnership with the policymakers as industry to make sure that that is created. The second thing which I want to put out accurately is that I think as developers we should want to work in an incentive-free, subsidy-free ecosystem, because I believe that's a crutch we don't need. Okay, you may need VGF, you may need FIT for offshore, you may need VGF for ESS for some time, but my belief is, very strong conviction is that as an industry we should quickly move toward being non-dependent on any government subsidies, because that's how sustainability comes in. And that's how scales of economy will have to come in for this to actually happen. So yes, we need banking support, we need transmission and wheeling charges waivers, we do need ISTS waivers, but let's also understand, and I was talking to Sandesh also, ALMM is not going to exist forever. There will be a sunset clause. We will have to plan as an industry for a future without subsidies. So while money is going to come in, I think we will have to keep an eye on the policy framework. We will have to keep an eye on the long-term ecosystem that's going to be created by all of us, and make sure that we create projects which last for 25 years, 20 years. Not projects which are built for 5 and 7 years, which is being seen in the industry also. So thank you.
Thanks, Deepak. I think we've run our course of questions. I just wanted to close out with maybe closing out remarks from Prakhar, Raghav, Anshul, right? So maybe just a minute in terms of your closing thoughts, and then take that up there.
Well, thank you again. Okay, so what I would like to highlight here is about the need of the hour. So the need of the hour is deeper understanding of regulations, whatever regulations we have, and then customize the solutions for the customer. So here, there are various innovative ways which we can think of and provide the customized solutions without relying on the policymakers and the incentives or the subsidies. For example, customizing a right solution form of wind solar hybrid solutions, and check what are the banking provisions, what kind of ratios we can maintain. And, because the future is moving towards around the clock, and, we got to be prepared for round-the-clock solutions without any subsidies and incentives. The other thing which I would like to highlight is we also need some regulations for VPPAs, because that's going to, change the dynamics for the CNI segment. With this, I would like to, close my closing remarks. Thanks.
Thank you.
So thanks, Srivatsa. I think Raghavendra, and apart from this, Kushagra and everybody has already covered all the points. Only thing is, I'll require your paper before leaving, so that most of it was most comprehensive. So we could listen instead of speaking more. Yeah.
Tell Kapil I need a dinner for that.
Yeah, sure. Done.
I'll give it over.
Done.
Thank you so much, everyone. That was a lovely session, very informative, very educational, and I myself personally have learned a lot from it. So thank you so much for that. And on that note, we would like to extend our appreciation to all the panelists. So I would request the moderator, Mr. Srivatsa Anchan, to present appreciation mementos to our panelists on our behalf, starting with the first panelist, Mr. Kushagra Nandan, MD and CEO, Sunsource Energy. Huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. presenting the next memento to our next panelist, Mr. Anshul Khandelwal, Strategy Lead New Energy Reliance. Huge round of applause again, ladies and gentlemen. The next memento is for our next panelist, Mr. Deepak Thakur, Managing Director and CEO, Mahindra Susten. The next memento is being presented to our next panelist, Mr. Raghavendra Madaiah, Head Non-Utility Markets Renewables, Apraava Energy Private Limited. Ladies and gentlemen, please be generous with your round of applauses. Our next memento is to be presented to Mr. Sandesh Shetty, National Sales Head, Waaree Energy. The next memento I would like to be presented to Mr. Prakhar Jha, Lead Projects, WELSPUN New Energy. Another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. And last but not the least, our kind moderator, Mr. Srivatsa Anchan, I would like to present a memento to him on behalf of Informa Markets. And a huge round of applause, please. It is important to capture such memories, such beautiful memories.